Hello, welcome, thanks for joining me. What a week this is going to be. Spring is in the air, the schools are back, and it's British Canoeing's AGM on Saturday. Well, of course, the AGM and Clubs Conference are going to be different this year. If you want to join the AGM virtually, you have until 10 o'clock on Thursday morning to register, and you do so on British Canoeing's website. But between now and Saturday, I'll be here with some special features and interviews. If you're watching live, they're going to be 7 o'clock every night on British Canoeing's Facebook and YouTube channels. If you don't make it live, they will be on catch up, but I hope you'll be able to join me and keep me company. Now, the topics have been suggested by clubs and centres, and I think we've got a really interesting week ahead of us. Tomorrow, it's environment and access, and we'll be dredging the River Derwent to see what's dumped in there. On Wednesday, Emma Wiggs, Paralympic gold medal winner from Rio, will be our guest. Emma has a remarkable story. As a teenager, she visited Australia, was bitten by an insect and was paralysed overnight. She talks about her journey and her love of paddle sport. On Thursday, it's social prescribing and mental health, and we'll be hearing from an organisation called Black Dog Outdoors, and that's a really fascinating half hour. And on Friday, it's social media, and you can learn how best to use social media for your club or centre. But today, it's International Women's Day, and we're going to hear about British Canoeing's She Paddles ambassadors. And to lead this one, here's Cadi Lambert.
Hello, I'm Cadi from British Canoeing. I head up the She Paddles programme at British Canoeing, and I'm delighted to be chatting today to Julie Perren.
And to set things up, I asked her to send us a little selfie video from her home patch in Devon.
So I've just walked down from my house, and I live a few hundred metres just up there. I brought my boat down, my sea kayak down on my trolley, and this is the slip where I've been launching all through lockdown. Pretty much most dates of the tide I can launch from here and paddle up and down. What I love about it is that it's always different, and there's always different things going on down here. There are rowers that use the river as well, so you have to be careful of them, but it's pretty beautiful. It's quite calm today, and I'm looking forward to going on a lovely paddle. So the River Dart's quite a meandery river, goes around lots of curves, and you never can quite tell what the wind's going to be doing round each corner, because it was forecast to be gusting into the force 5, and I haven't hit it yet, but I know that once I get round these next few corners it's going to be waiting for me, and you can never quite predict which way it's going to be coming, even though it says it's a westerly, but by the time it's been round these corners it turns into something else. But what a stunning morning, and how lovely to be able to actually get out on the river at last after being stuck inside for what feels like, it's only weeks, but it feels like a lot longer than that because the weather's been so awful. But it's making up for it now. There's not a day I come down here in my kayak or my surf ski when I don't find that it's different in some way, either the height of the tide or the wind or the sun or the rain sometimes, or even the ice, and I think it's why I enjoy coming down here so much. It's always peaceful as well. I think I've met a couple of rowers coming in the other direction, and that's it. And it just gives me time to myself, really, and with my own thoughts, and that can't be bad, can it?
And that's Julie down in Devon.
By way of introduction, I've got a few little facts about Julie for you. Julie took up paddling around 14 years ago after moving to Devon. She joined Totnes Canoe Club, and upon realising that only 2 of the 24 coaches there were female, she decided it was time to do something about that and become a coach herself. She went on to become a course coordinator and runs the sea kayaking peer group for Totnes Canoe Club, as well as becoming the first female club chair. Julie is also a co-founder of the Women's Sea Kayak Festival in Devon, and regularly coaches at other events worldwide when COVID is not happening. In the past year, Julie has set up a sea kayak mentoring group for local paddlers who are looking to advance their skills and coaching qualifications. And she's inspired others to do the same around the country. Julie has also recently passed her Advanced Sea Kayak Leader Award. And on top of all of this, Julie has, for the last year, been one of British Canoeing's She Paddles ambassadors. And I'm really delighted to be chatting to you today, Julie. Thank you so much for this. We're going to have a chat about
Cadi.
all those things.
Yeah, it sounds quite a lot, doesn't it, when you list it like that?
It is a lot. It is. It's a wonderful little resume to read out. So,
well, yeah, considering I didn't really want to get into canoeing at all, I'm not quite sure how all that happened. So,
how did you accidentally get into canoeing then?
Well, I got involved with a partner who was a very experienced sea kayaker, so literally got thrown into it in the deep end, and did a bit of kayaking for a few years before I got involved with the club.
Okay.
So when I did get involved with the club, I was all ready to start doing awards, and very quickly had my arm twisted into coaching, which, as you've just pointed out, there was a real lack of women coaches within the club, and yet the membership of the club was fairly mixed, really good mix, but it just wasn't reflected in the coaching team, and that was the reason that I got involved in the first place. Had no intention of going down that route at all.
That's something that we find a lot with clubs, and it's something that's come up quite a lot with our Club Champion project, is that at sort of the new paddler level, there is actually quite an even split of male and female paddlers, but as they work their way up towards becoming coaches and leaders, the split changes completely, and it's something that we'd really like to change.
Yeah, I've noticed that myself going through the system. It's improving now, all the time it's improving, but certainly when I was learning, as I was learning at each stage, I was aware of that, of just the lack of role models there were to follow, and that role models are so important. Certainly they were to me, because they make it feel achievable.
Yes.
Like, well, if that person, they can do it. They're not a great big strong guy, they can do it, so why can't I do it? Yeah, it definitely helps.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I always sort of talk to the club champions about, is the someone like me thing. If people can see someone like me doing something, then they will believe it's something that they can do as well. And you have been a great help with that Club Champion project, although you're not actually a part of it yourself. And just, the project is to get more women and girls into coaching and leadership roles. It's funded by the Sports England Diversity Fund. Why do you feel that really is important to you?
It is because, as you mentioned, you're getting to the women and the girls that are starting out in paddling right at the ground level. And as you say, there are quite a lot starting out and have been. They're getting more so all the time. So what happens? Why are they not going any further or getting as far down the line as they could be? What's putting them off? And I think by the Club Champion scheme, where you're giving them a questionnaire and asking them to really question what happens in their clubs, it's making people look at clubs and say, well, how inviting is this to a woman to join? Certainly I've suggested a few people that might be interested in that scheme within my club and others, and they've shown me what they've written, because they thought I'd be interested, which I am very interested, because one was about the club that I'm chair of, and some of these things we're just totally unaware of, because once you've joined the club and you're in and you're busy doing stuff, you're just not aware of how many pictures there are of women. That question, certainly, I thought, I hadn't really noticed, and I went back and looked at our website, and fortunately our website's fairly well represented, but I can see that is a question that's often not raised within a club. Let's show everybody enjoying paddle sports, and then, as you say, it's a role model, so I can do that. I think it's a great idea, and I hope that those ladies are all going to move on through the award scheme, or certainly stick with it.
Well, yeah, I think that's the great thing, because the two main parts to the Club Champion project are the self-diagnostic tool, but also that anyone on the project gets to take the qualification as a paddle sport instructor. So we are putting them onto that coaching and leadership pathway, which is wonderful. And you're right, the diagnostic tool, I think for everybody, even as I wrote it, it brought up things for me that, you know, as I was writing, I think, they really need to think about this. And you're so right, the answer that I get back a lot when I ask people what's the split on, you know, imagery and things is, we don't have that many female paddlers, so we don't have many pictures of women. And I always say, but if you don't have many pictures of women, then when a woman comes to your website, they're not going to think that's the space for them. So sometimes it's really important to have a more even split. And that's obviously just one part of that tool. It's a really important tool that does walk someone through every stage of the club experience, almost through a fresh set of eyes. It's been incredibly interesting, some of the answers that have come up through those tools. And there are some great clubs out there doing wonderful things.
Yeah, doing great things. I remember initially I joined a different club and went to a pool session, and I can remember turning up as someone that was there to learn to roll, and the pool was full of young lads and guys teaching young lads, and that really, I mean, I still carried on and learnt to roll, but felt totally stupid and couldn't really do it very well. But I felt intimidated by this pool full of guys that knew what they were doing. I don't, you know, that's a little while ago, so I'm not sure that that's changed now, but I hope it has. But when you see, certainly one of our pool sessions, you've got a total mix of people in the pool and also coaching alongside as well, and that's just so much more inviting to a woman or girl turning up.
I agree completely, and one of the things that I say again when that question gets answered, we only have male coaches, so we only have men getting new people on the water. I say, well, it doesn't have to be a female coach helping out, but if you have got somebody who's willing to be there so that people feel that there's someone they can really relate to at a first session or a pool, you know, when they're learning a new skill, it just makes such a difference to people. And absolutely. I think something like learning to roll can be quite intimidating, and if there's nobody there that you really relate to, then that could be it could put people off, and that's what we want to stop at every stage. So
as if learning to roll wasn't enough to put anybody off.
It's probably the thing I hear the most from people about learning to roll. I've never done it myself, so I haven't gone through that. But one of the things that you've been brilliant at is creating those supportive communities. And you have started your own mentoring groups during a time when most people aren't really starting anything up. So can you tell me what brought that about and how it works?
Okay, so the She Ambassador opportunity came up, and I was given a role to be this person that supported women, which and I remember having a conversation with you where you said just be yourself and do what you do anyway, which I was going to do, but I felt like I wanted to do something to celebrate the year, if you like, that I could say, well, I did that in that year, and I could certainly see the need locally here to help a few ladies that I know are on the pathway that would probably have benefit from someone to talk to. So I approached 5 ladies, all at slightly different stages in their development, and said, would you be interested to work with me? It's a two-way thing. Can we work together, and let's establish where you'd like to be in a year's time and see if we can work towards that. And at the same time, I was going to commit to doing Performance Coach Award. And I was open about that. So I'm doing this new award, and I've got a few experiments in coaching I'd like to try out. Do you mind me trying those out on you as well? And they were very happy to do that. And I said, okay, well, I'll do that. And we'll with each person, we wrote down what they would be interested in doing. And we were looking at all the ways, sort of holistically, that they could get to where they wanted to go. And some of the sessions were the group of us, the 5 of us together. We've had, I think, 4 We've had to cancel and change, and we've still got sessions to run, but we've had such a laugh in those sessions that we've had between us. But as well as that, they were then planning to go to different places and do other coach training, or either coach training or go and do some training in a different area, go and do things like, you know, yoga, breathing exercises, all the things that work around kayaking, navigation, not just the time on the water. But it was looking at that, making a plan and trying to maintain the contact with each other over the time, which has been much harder than it might have been in different times. But I did a halfway questionnaire with them all quite recently, and my first question was, what have you actually managed to achieve? And everyone's come back, and once they've written down what they have managed to do this year, they've all made progress and have been surprised that they've made progress, even in the little things they've been able to do, just because we've been working together to make it happen. And I just think that makes a huge difference. And I particularly want to start it because I remember thinking myself, I could do with someone to talk to about this. It's great when it's all going well, it's great, isn't it? But when you go on a trip and then, I don't know, your roll fails and you've been practicing really hard and you feel really demoralised, and then you just don't go for a couple of weeks because you don't feel great about it. Whereas if you've got someone to talk to and go, my roll didn't work, damn, and that person is on the other end going, well, it doesn't. Don't worry about it. Let's just forget that. Focus on something different. Do this. Just having someone to air those ideas with, I think, really helps. And the one thing I had asked of them, other than that I could help them, was that they then mentored or supported another paddler onto the water or with their own journey. And that could be a guy or a girl. It didn't have to be a woman. It was just if each one of you supports one other person, then that means between us that's 10 people that we've mentored. And they were initially quite concerned that they weren't coaches, or some of them are coaches, and would they say the wrong thing? And I said, really, it's really not about being a high level coach. It's about just being there for somebody and supporting their journey. And that seems to work really well. They've taken that on board quite seriously in a big way. So they report back going, I've took someone out today and I've taken them out, which is just fantastic, isn't it? Because the very fact of looking after someone else is giving them confidence as well, I think. So I just think it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
So I'm pleased with how it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I basically stole your idea once you told me about it, and worked it into the club champion work, because in the final section of the self-diagnostic tool, it asks the question, how many female coaches and leaders do you have at your club, and how is progression encouraged? And that's where we always get this sort of flat line. And so I started to suggest to all of the club champions, right, start up a mentoring group, and you don't have to be coaches and leaders yourself. What you have to do really is just encourage each other and give each other someone to talk to. So it's made a big difference. I know that some of the club champions have taken it on board and they've started to do that. It's wonderful to see their faces light up when we suggest that, because the idea of having a supportive group is really lovely. And I think supportive communities are very, very important, especially for female paddlers.
I also think that there are people out there doing this all over the place, and they always have done. We've helped each other, haven't we? So that's the idea is not exactly new or different, but I think by giving it some kind of structure and coming to some kind of agreement at the beginning about how often you'll meet and how you'll deliver feedback, and how it will work and what time frame it's working in, I think that gives it a bit more reality, and it gives you a bit of something to commit to. And I certainly did the British Canoeing Mentor module that you can do before I started this, which is very helpful and very accessible for people to do.
Oh, great. So that's the online e-learning that we've got. That's brilliant.
Yes.
And so when you say about the structure, Is that something that you can replicate? Is it something that would be easy for someone else in a club to replicate, that sort of structure?
I think absolutely, because I've got the ladies I'm working with on that particular scheme. We're relatively informal. Only, they report in when stuff's been going on, or I say I've done a 6-month questionnaire. But I've got another lady I'm working with who's very motivated, and she barely needs someone, but she does need someone because she's got a busy career and time is taken up with work, and it's really hard to focus on a paddling goal when you've got your brain full of lots of other things, other commitments. So to have someone else working with you on that is great. And for her, we've got a project management package app that we've been using, and we've filled in, she's filled in the end goal, which is to take an award. And then we've worked backwards from that as far as we can for this year and looked at where she wants to be at each stage. And we've done it much more formally.
Right.
But I think it really depends on what's going to work for the person.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I really like that it would need to be adapted for the individual. Some people, we know everyone learns in different ways, and if you put a rigid structure in for one person, it'll be brilliant, and if you put it in for another person, they're probably just going to walk away, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I recommend to the club champions is when they're first starting out with their mentoring group is to use the Paddles Up website to have a look at what's out there qualification wise, because some people just don't know what pathway they might want to get onto. They're not sure what skills they need to develop for what awards, or which awards they could consider. So I always sort of suggest go on the Paddles Up website, have a good look around, have a chat about which one suits you as well.
It's been a fairly slow, considered journey, and also I've had to balance other jobs and kids and parents and all the things that we have in our lives. So I feel very empathetic to people that are paddling and trying to fit lots of other things in, which often seems to be the case. But equally, they're really keen and they want to do it, and it's really important to them to do it. So no, I definitely will continue with it. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. And I do think it's so important to allow people to know they can fit it in around all of those other things in their lives. And we talk about it a lot on the project, as when we look at clubs and what time they put on sessions for newcomers and things like that. I always say, if you were a working parent, you've got to get your young children to bed, etc. Is a session at 6 p.m. going to work? It might not, and to always chat to members of the club to find out what suits everybody, so that it's not just a session that suits some people. And I get the impression you may have learned a lot about how to mentor and all of that planning from your Women's Sea Kayaking Festival in Devon as well.
Well, I suppose that was quite a big starting point for me, and that happened entirely by chance, really, because of going to the Scottish Women's Sea Kayaking Festival in Bute, which I went to almost by chance, and it had just an amazing atmosphere that was totally unlike any other event that I'd been to. And I had 2 paddling buddies with me as well, and we said, yeah, should we give it a go? Yeah, go on, let's do that. So the next year we ran one down in Devon. That's 2015, and it really was it was quite worrying commitment of money, and because we got a marquee and catering and a dedicated field, and 65 participants, and fortunately some great coaches, all women coaches, who were really supportive of the event without really knowing what we were doing, and it went so well that we said, all right, okay, well that was okay. Should we try that again? But we run it every other year,
right? Because
we felt like, A, it's quite a big thing to organise, but B, I think you don't want too many events. It becomes more valued, I think, if it's run every other year. This year we've made the decision that we are committed to have a marquee for 30 this year, and we've just got our fingers crossed that we're going to be able to do that, and that's in mid-August.
Right.
So we just hope we can do it. We'll have to see what how things change, and hopefully they'll open out enough for us to have 30 people in an outdoor venue. And even if we have our marquee with no sides on it, then we can work around it. And the minute we've announced that we're doing it, I've already had so much reaction saying, "Good, when are you opening bookings?" Which we're opening at the beginning of March, and hopefully we'll be ready. But it will be a smaller event and slightly different, but that's how it is at the moment. So yeah, I've definitely learned so much through doing that, and it's opened my eyes to how valuable these events are. Even going as a participant was great, but actually being the person that's the first person that greets women as they come in the field, and they come in the field, and often they've not been to any event like this. They turn up and maybe they're hiring boats, so they haven't got boats with them. And I've had ladies say, "But oh my goodness, all these people, they all know what they're doing." Well, no, they don't. We're all pretending. We don't know what we're doing. We're here to find out a bit more. No, you're very welcome. Come in. And by the end of it, they hopefully have gained the independence and the confidence to then go and try another event, go and try a mainstream paddling community event, which is what has happened. And having seen that, I can see it's a way in. It's often a way in for women who wouldn't have put themselves out there any other way. I think they're really valuable.
That is incredibly valuable, isn't it? And I think you're so right that just having that gateway in and that space where they feel confident and happy. And I know that one of my colleagues, Jenny, came to your Sea Kayak Festival. Yeah. And a bit like a bit as you were saying, Jenny's paddled all her life. She's very confident. She's always paddled, with men and women, and happy doing that. And sort of was a bit, well, why do we need it to be all women? What's the point of that? And she came back absolutely buzzing, and she actually mentioned that very first bit as you pull into the field, that somebody was there to greet you and say, "Oh, hi, come along in." And she said from that moment she was swept up into that community and just loved it, loved I saw her photos of you all around a map planning things and getting out on the sea, and I think it's incredibly valuable because I was the same when I first started running the She Paddles programme. I questioned, do we really need female specific sessions? Do clubs need to run them? And I don't think they always do, but I also think there is a real space for them. And if it helps some people, then why not? Why not give them that gateway?
Yeah, why not? I think I've always felt that I'm supporting a minority.
Absolutely, and that goes back to the mentor, the role models again, doesn't it? These female paddlers come along and they see the people who are the coaches there, and they see, well, hang on a minute, they're not that far different from me as a person, so perhaps I'll be here one day being the coach.
Maybe I can do this. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, there's nothing different about people that are coaches. They've just been had some more training, and I think it's good to realise that they're just real people that have gone through all the same issues.
So where can people find out about when the tickets do go on sale for the Sea Kayak Festival? Where can people find out about that?
Okay, we've got a website at Women's Sea Kayak Festival, Devon, and I'm just going to check my dates, but it's the 14th, 15th and 16th of August this year. I'd just like to flag up another event which is run a couple of times now, and that's in Anglesey. That's the Women's Essential Weekend, which is on the 4th, 5th and 6th of June this year, hopefully. And that's hosted by Kayak Essentials. That weekend's slightly different in that it's based in Anglesey, which has some challenging waters. And I think it's aimed at perhaps slightly different level paddler to enjoy those environments and to progress in the tidal waters and the tide races as well. So that's another good event that I know of. And I think there's another one popping up in Cornwall in June this year as well. And I know there are others in Scotland, certainly.
Well, that's brilliant.
Ladies up there are very active.
It's so good to hear that these events are popping up and there are more and more of them. That's wonderful. And talking about challenging waters in Anglesey, you recently passed your Advanced Sea Kayak Leader assessment, and I know that was challenging.
Yes. Who'd have thought it, eh? I know at each stage of my development, I remember thinking I could never get a 3-star. Oh, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. It's far too scary. 4-star, no way can I do 4-star. And I had to have a bit of a push to get towards that, to actually go to assessment. This is another subject that we could talk for a long time about, is barriers to assessment. But I did do it, and then another gap, and eventually I've done Advanced Leader, which I just didn't think in a million years I would ever be able to do, because I'm too small, I'm not strong enough, I'm not, all the reasons, I'm not brave enough, all the reasons that we go through in our heads to think that we can't get where we want to get to, or think we would like to get to. So I'm so chuffed with having got that far.
And you mentioned technique and strength, and that is something that comes up quite a lot. Have you had to adapt techniques and things to get to the same end result? Do you think?
Yeah, sometimes I have, just because I'm not as tall, or my arms aren't as long, or I can't reach as far. And I remember hitting this quite early on and finding it quite off-putting, because I learnt I do whitewater kayaking as well, because I live very close to the River Dart here, and it has to be done because it's so inviting. You have to go and do it. I learned at the same time as some other guys, and they seemed to progress more quickly than I did. I felt that they were moving on and I was still falling in and not getting anywhere. And I hit a point where I suddenly realised that they were using brute strength on some things that I just didn't have to, maybe to get through an eddy line or to push through a rapid or something like that. And I don't think I realised this until I developed enough strength myself to realise the difference. But what I had developed in that time was better technique, because I had to. And there was definitely a point where I realised this, and it was probably about 3 years into paddling. And I think some of the time in that first 2 or 3 years, I certainly really questioned what on earth I was doing, because it really felt like I wasn't getting anywhere at all. So that was definitely a point where I think a bit of encouragement with technique and not just using strength, because at the end of the day, the technique wins out if you've got it right. And people have told me this over the years, and I haven't believed them. I certainly, once I got to that point, I really did believe them and think, yeah, I can see this. But I've had to apply the same theories to some rescuing. And so I just have to think about it a bit more carefully when I'm rescuing a boat, how I lift it, how I turn it. I've got ways that I know work for me, and that's not necessarily always the way that someone teaches it. So we just have to be a bit careful to make sure that we can do what works for us. And I think that's the way that the new award system is changing as well, so that it's more inclusive, so that the outcome of something doesn't always look the same on the water of how somebody does something. They're achieving it in the way that they're able to do it, and it's just as valid.
And I think that ethos around coaching has changed a lot recently with British Canoeing, and I think that's wonderful that people, it isn't just you have to do this one way to get there. It's look at the individual. It's very much about the individual, isn't it?
Yeah,
brilliant.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with me today, Julie. It's been wonderful. And it's fantastic having you as an ambassador. I think it really shows why you're such a great ambassador for British Canoeing, because you really are doing exactly what we want, which is to encourage more women and girls to get into and stay in paddle sports. So thank you.
Right, it's been my pleasure, and I'm really pleased that we've extended the ambassadorship this year, so we're going on till August rather than April, which is great, because we just feel like we haven't had enough time on the water, but looking forward to it.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Julie, and I will let you get off. No doubt you're off paddling again soon, so I'll let you get on.
I might go today, actually. The wind's dropped. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay.
Thanks, Cadi.
So thank you, Julie. And thank you, Cadi. A great way to kick off our week of programmes between 7 and 7:30, half an hour a night. Thank you too for all the comments. Julie was a great guest there, and we've got many more coming up over the next 4 days. We've got access and the environment tomorrow. We're looking at elite sport on Wednesday, mental health on Thursday, and on Friday, how clubs, centres and yourself can use social media. Thanks so much for watching. If you missed any of it, you can get it on catch up. It'll be there anytime now. And don't forget, if you want to register to be at the AGM, online of course, on Saturday, then you need to do so before 10 o'clock this coming Thursday the 11th. Thanks very much for joining us today, and hopefully see you 7 o'clock, same place tomorrow.